Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird. Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Episode 293 of the See You on the Other Side podcast, talking about crisis and the paranormal. And this seems to be the exact time we want to talk about crisis and the paranormal, because this is weird. Everything has been kind of weird lately. And so this is the time when we want to say, like, okay, if everything's still going to be weird for a little while yet, what are we going to do to kind of work with that and handle it? And so just to kind of start out, during this weird time, Wendy and Allison, what have you guys been doing to stay centered when the rest of the world is getting just a little bit topsy-turvy?
Staying centered. Well, for me, the great thing about it was that it really hasn't changed for me. I was already working from home, so I was already just interfacing with people over the internet since about August. So things really hadn't changed for me, except that my husband, who is a public school teacher, he had to start teaching from home. So I was able to help him from that, because my side hustle is teaching English over the internet to Chinese students. So for me, I've just been doing this all the time since August. So it was like no different, except that now I have a buddy to work with during the day.
Okay, as someone who works from home, even before this, did you have any kind of like coping mechanisms for maybe working in the same place where you live? I mean,
yeah,
kind of a different situation.
I just feel that being at home in itself can help you develop more of a work-life balance. I know it's tempting maybe when you work at home to make your life just all work and no play. But since you're already at home, you could start incorporating some play into your life as well. It doesn't have to be all work and no play. I mean, you're at home, so you have.
I don't know if I want to hear about my sister, my brother-in-law, and the kind of play you have integrated into your life now.
Oh man,
yeah. He has joked about that.
What's the joke?
Yeah, no, just that. And anytime
Mike,
you get bored,
ears.
you've got your significant What? You have your significant other right there. So, it's great to have this extra time with family, I think, for everybody. And I think if you just change your perspective about it, and for me, I teach Chinese kids, so I already kind of knew that this was coming in a way. I mean, I didn't realize that everything that's happened there would happen here, but I knew what they were going through, because the kids invariably would share it with me, of course. And it was very scary for them. But yet, I mean, I would see them every week. And, their lives, although they weren't going to school physically, they were still, being fed and getting proper rest. And, you're cooped up. But, I mean, no one's torturing you. I mean, there are good things that you can welcome into your life now. And the hustle and the bustle has decreased. So, I mean, that's a positive thing about this. So, I mean, it is very difficult to think about the positive sides of the situation because of all the suffering that we know people that are going through out there. I mean, it's not me suffering, and I'm thankful for that. And so what my position has allowed me to do is reach out to like all my friends over all these weeks and find out how they're doing, if there's anything that we can do to support them. So, and my husband has been shopping for the elders in our family so that they don't need to go out and put themselves in in harm's way, because they're more vulnerable to the virus. So this staying at home, refocuses you, and it can refocus you on positive things if you let it.
Sure.
Of course, I would really suggest a news fast, and I would suggest that not only via watching TV or radio, but also maybe watching it on social media as well. I mean, there's been a lot of craziness on social media. People denying that this is happening, and making up all kinds of scenarios.
Besides the See Another Side podcast and everything else, I think you should not watch anything.
Yes.
You can help it.
Just watch us. We're going to give you the news, but also a positive spin.
But everybody has their own opinion about what's going on. Everybody has their opinion about what's happening with the reaction to it.
Right.
And and the thing is that what I've discovered, because I've been reading the whole thing. I read Reddit/conspiracy every day, which isn't necessarily a good idea.
This is supposed to be about being healthy, Mike.
Well, right. And that is not the healthiest thing in the world to read that every day. But I tell you what, it certainly is interesting to, read those kind of things and then, see how people are feeling in the world and realize that everybody's having a different perspective right now. And some people are freaking out in certain ways. Some people are freaking out because they're at home stuck with people they don't want to be stuck with.
Yeah.
Some people are, and when you think about how many kids are stuck with abusive parents and all those kind of things. Like, there is a real reason to freak out right now, but at the same time, there are ways that we can kind of handle it in a positive way. And so I think, Allison, the first thing you're talking about is the news fast. Like, go in there and start, just close off the flood of information that's coming in all the time. Because number one, you don't always know which sources you can trust. Mm-hmm. But number two, people are going to get, the thing is, if we think that discourse between people is what makes for a healthy political environment, we know how the social media, people talk to each other politically over social media, that's just going to get worse.
Right.
And so the first thing I would say is close the floodgates.
Yeah. And I would suggest, too, that get the news from maybe people that I mean, what I mean by that is, instead of believing like Fox News or whatever, maybe look around you to your local community and the people that you actually know, and the people in your family, and see what they're going through. I mean, reconnect with reality in your local sphere rather than trying to understand things in abstraction. I think
that's a great message right there. Like, when it's going, so what you're saying is, look at the people around you. And this is the one positive thing before we get into paranormal ways people have dealt with it.
Yeah.
Is reconnecting with the people around you that actually matter.
Right.
I mean, I think we found ourselves, social media makes it really easy to care about things on the other side of the planet, which not that we're saying we shouldn't care about them, but there are things happening in our own backyards and things happening with our families.
Yes. And these are the people you can help.
There's a lot of people that I know that they'll say oh my God, didn't you hear about this? And they'll get all outraged about something.
Haven't you heard about the mole children? What about the mole children, Mike?
What about the mole children? But then they'll go and they're like, well, obviously I haven't talked to my mother in 6 years, that stupid bitch. And you're like, okay, I get it. There's a whole world out there of horrible things happening, but maybe this is a good chance to think about the people in your own life.
Right.
Andy?
Because we know they're real.
I totally agree with that. And I also think that if you're curious and you want to educate yourself, to find trusted resources online that are, scientific journals and actual, the people that are doing the research on the virus, rather than reading opinion articles about people who think the testing statistics are only showing this or that. Just find out, there's some interesting information out there. Do with it what you want. But I find that reading that rather than reading the opinions or just everybody spreading stuff around that they heard. I heard that this makes it worse, or you're likelier to get it if somebody sweaty touches you, or, it's like, hold on. What are the people that are actually researching it finding? And just, stick
Absolutely.
with that. And then, of course, stick with your local people and your family and friends and stuff like that. But
Well, always worry about information sources that are designed to do two things: sell you advertisements and to get you clicking. Like, think about those things, number one. And I kind of, we could have a whole discussion about media, mainstream versus independent versus
so
conspiracy. That whole world we could talk about. But let's talk about things that you can do in the crisis from a paranormal perspective. And
All right.
why, and the way that our brains activate and things like that. And the thing is, the first thing we need to think about, I think, is anxiety. And anxiety seems to be, maybe this is because of social media, anxiety seems to be more in the news than ever. And people are feeling constantly anxious. This is when we had a regular world and I wasn't speaking to you from my frickin' basement. Right?
wait, but Mike, you're not in the basement. You're
No,
floating on a psychological
I am.
Mandela pattern of some sort.
Yeah, you're journeying into the center of your mind right now, Mike.
For the listeners, Mike's background is kind of like a kaleidoscope thing going on.
Yes. So Sam says, mole children, crab people, and killer clowns from outer space.
Killer clowns!
Oh
Yeah, my favorite things. What I love about that, Sam, is that for a Halloween show in the year 2000, Wendy and Ben and I were like, we're going to play Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the song by the Dickies.
Such a great
And
song.
It's an awesome song. And it's the theme song from the movie. And we're like, it's going to kill. And it certainly killed the audience's interest in our band.
Oh no!
It was just, we're like, oh, Killer Clowns. You guys love that song. Like, this is going to be funny. And everybody who gets it. And then we play it.
And then nobody got it.
And it's got the little like circus da 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 like as part of the guitar
Crickets.
solo. It's so brilliant.
Right,
But yeah, there were 3 people in the room that were really into it. Me, Mike, and Ben.
Right. And
Everybody else
was like, wow, you guys are stupid. So thanks for that, though. That reminder of my failure.
It's always there for you, Mike.
But because it makes me feel anxious.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but the thing is, we all feel fear and anxiety at some point in our life, right? Like
Oh, absolutely.
And it seems like social anxiety and stuff like that has increased. But now we're at a point where are we feeling anxiety about not just other people in the way of anxiousness, like what are they going to think about us? Now we're worried about, are they sick? Are they going to think that we're not doing enough against the virus?
Yeah.
We're worried about what people think of us when we go out in public.
Yeah.
Yeah, get in your house.
If you don't have, what happens when you don't have your mask on at the right time?
You get judged.
Yeah.
And everybody's like looking at you.
Right.
People are cracking. There was a guy, there's a full adult. He must have been 30 years old yesterday at the playground I take my daughter to. And so we were walking around the playground and she asked me every day, can we play in the equipment today? And I'm like, no. I'm like, no, little girl, you will get sick and die. No, I don't say that to her.
Jeez.
But I do say like, no, we can't play yet because people are still getting sick and there might be germs on the things. And she seems to understand it. This guy is sitting on the swings, just cranking out the swing, just like going, like he's going,
Just pumping.
And I'm like, is this some kind of act of civil disobedience? What's he doing?
Oh my gosh.
What is the point of that? But the thing is like, and then I kind of watched him as he like walked away and I'm like, where's that guy going?
Maybe he needed some exercise because the gyms are all
Right.
closed now.
The gyms are all closed. But it was just an interesting thing. Like, why is he deliberately disobeying the order that the playground is closed? This adult, not a kid who doesn't know the difference, but an adult. And that's his way, whatever, of coping, that he's dealing with the anxiety. And it's, anxiety is a good thing in the way that if we did not feel anxious, sometimes when we actually were in a life or death situation, not just at the park, like in the swing set, but we're actually in a life and death situation, anxiety makes it so we're afraid of something that can kill us. And that's our amygdala response, right? The amygdala, when you're getting down to the lizard brain, we have this part, the brain stem, which is the first part of us that evolved, and the amygdala is part of that. And so we have this response in our amygdala to things that we should be afraid of because they might kill us.
Yeah. So
Allison?
that's like in in the times of prehistory, when somebody was out there on the savannah and they saw the grass moving in a certain way, well, okay, they might think there's a lion about to pounce. I'm seeing that in the grass. And they run, right? And maybe there's not a lion there, but sometimes there is a lion there. So the
Better
people,
safe than sorry when it comes to lions.
the people who ran away more survived. And we're the descendants of those people many generations ago. So we're the ones that prevailed, the really anxious, neurotic ones.
So
Nice.
John Dreizga, our Patreon from New Jersey.
Hi, John.
You can't enter stores in New Jersey without a mask. Also, all playgrounds are
So they
closed.
must have implemented the rule there then. The mask.
Yeah, the no mask.
Well, New Jersey, New York, and actually Michigan are the hardest hit states right now. So yeah, they are doing whatever they can to limit the spread.
I mean, obviously, that guy's probably not going to be the guy on the playground by my house. Probably isn't spreading the disease or whatever. But the thing is, it made me anxious of what he was doing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is that?
What's
And I
that
get
all
it. Like,
about?
maybe he's like, hey, you are taking away my, like, this is unconstitutional.
My
what we're
personal
doing.
freedom, yeah.
And
You're
it's
limiting
absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely unconstitutional what's going on here. But the thing is this? I mean, what kind of where's the trade-offs we're making? And I feel anxious myself because I'm like, I don't want him to do that, but yet I support his right to do that, but yet the governor would not support his right to do that. So it's coming from all sides, and I'm
yet,
blown off the walls.
For all you know, the guy might have just needed a few minutes of like clarity and a little exercise, and he's just like, you know what? I'm gonna pump on that swing for 5 minutes, and then
I'm
all
going to, go into the decontamination booth.
it might not have been as much as you read into it, just because of your anxiety. Like.
And you're absolutely right, Wen. I think to me it was a matter of that all of a sudden I am seeing people break the rules right in front of me, and that makes me feel anxious at the same time.
Right.
And so I guess we're going into all of these things where our amygdalas are firing over stuff that's not a lion.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. We have these innate responses, and the difference between us and maybe some other life forms, I don't know, but I do know that we are, at least most of us, thinking beings. So, I mean, it's hard when you get those deep responses like from the lizard brain to remember that and to activate your frontal cortex and use those things in combination and like really deliberate and say, well, I have the time now to think this through. And so I'm going to recognize those responses as they occur, and I'm going to think through them. Like, is this a situation where the anxiety is driving me in the correct direction, or is it driving me in a counterproductive direction? So we can think about it. And that's the gift of this situation now, is we have the time. We have the time to focus inside ourselves. We have the time to reconnect with family members. Everyone who is essential to your life is probably with you now. And you have this break from, this merry-go-round that we've been on of, productivity and just going to work and just, all these things that we wish we could have a break from. And now you have it. So let's not let this opportunity pass. Yes, you're going to feel anxiety, but let's think about it.
I just want to stand up for a second for the people that, because we were talking about this in our Sunspot live hangout on Thursday, and our guitar player was saying that he thought it was going to feel luxurious. There was going to be a ton of time, but in reality, and for, working couples with kids where both parents work, and now they're also homeschooling or trying to manage their children, doing schooling online. actually they have less time. Like I have the luxury, we don't have kids. So I have gained, by not driving to the office, that's like an extra hour for me. It's like, hey, it's a free hour. I can, even if I just meditate. But then I realize that there's people who are trying to cram in meetings, they're teaching, and then they have their kids, they're bouncing back and forth. So it's kind of a unique situation for everybody.
Yeah.
So time is not necessarily a guarantee, like extra time isn't necessarily a guarantee.
Certainly, yeah. So I would say for everyone,
this is a total nightmare for parents.
yeah,
Right?
just
Like if you don't have school or daycare, this is a complete and total nightmare, especially if you have to work from home, or even worse, if your job,
no.
or even worse, if your job's gone and you're
Right.
applying for
Yeah.
unemployment and the unemployment's not coming through because the system can't handle it.
Right, exactly.
Like,
Like
Right.
these state systems where unemployment comes from, they're only designed for several 100,000 people.
Yeah.
They're not designed for 1 million people. And we've got like 16 million people in the country on unemployment. So the thing is, your anxiety is real and it sucks. And the thing is, your amygdala is firing off, and it's firing off not from something that we understand. It's firing off from something we don't understand.
Yeah.
And, when they removed amygdala, or you had a chimpanzee that had a damage to their amygdala, you would find that chimpanzee like doing dangerous things because it no longer understood fight or flight. It no longer understood anxiety. It would just be like, oh, that looks dangerous. Let's take a look at that. Which is like we all have friends. We all have friends like that, and then maybe
with damaged amygdalas.
they absolutely might have damaged amygdalas. I mean, they also might be sociopaths. But
Lovely.
I mean, they could have damaged amygdalas. Well, what I thought was interesting is, one of the first things I thought about when this whole thing happened was that everybody always talks about the what's known as the Chinese curse.
Right, even though it's not Chinese, which we'll get to.
Ooh.
Right. May you live in interesting times. And that was the point. The point was like, oh, interesting. Because interesting can also be something positive or something negative. And so they even call it the Chinese curse. And it's like, oh my God, is it really like the Chinese have that kind of thing? I mean, it's a long history in China. And it goes back to like the 19th century speeches of like an English politician by the name of Joseph Chamberlain. And, he said that he had heard it in China. And in the 1930s, this guy comes out and he goes, I was talking to Austin Chamberlain, who was the brother of the prime minister at the time, not Wilt Chamberlain.
Nice.
No, but whoever was the prime minister of the United Kingdom before Churchill, and everybody says that he tried to appease Hitler, and he's obviously not thought of as the greatest guy in the world because without him, we wouldn't have had Winston Churchill, and so maybe his actions were necessary, but at the same time, and also he was trying not to get people back into a world war because after World War I, people were like, we don't want to do that again. But so Austin Chamberlain, the brother prime minister, they were having a discussion with this French guy, Frédéric René Cordier Jr. I don't know Junior. How do they say it in French? And he concludes the letter with a rather, regular. We were living in an interesting age. And this Chamberlain responds and goes, many years ago, I learned from one of our diplomats in China that one of the principal Chinese curses heaped upon an enemy is, may you live in an interesting age. Surely, he said, no age has been more fraught with insecurity than our own present time. That was in 1933. And, where the Chamberlains, who one was a brother that was the prime minister that was appeasing Hitler. The other was a diplomat.
Neville Chamberlain.
Neville, thank you. I kept on thinking of the Neville brothers for some. I would about the Neville brothers because of that. But so that but their father had said that he heard that from a Chinese guy, and it's not really Chinese. Like he may have been drinking with a Chinese guy at a time the Chinese guy said it.
But there's no documentation.
It's not a traditional Chinese curse whatsoever.
But there were other curses that went with it. It wasn't just may you live in interesting times. Another one was may you catch the attention of those in authority.
Okay.
I like that one.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yes. I think there was a third one too, but I'm not remembering it right now.
There's the other. the thing is, why it's like your friend that gets a Chinese letter like tattooed on him, or like a Hebrew word tattooed on him. You know, it's kind of like they're like, in Hebrew this means badass, and then you look at it, it's like the Hebrew word for cabbage, and you're like,
Well, let's be honest, cabbage is pretty badass, Mike.
I do like cabbage.
Right, okay.
I can't deny.
But there's also like the idea that, man, the Chinese word for crisis is danger plus opportunity.
Yes. So I like
Is that
that
true,
you're going
Allison?
that way, Mike. I don't know, but there are actually 80,000 Chinese characters, and there's only 26 letters in English. So I got a lot of learning to do. But what you just said, the combination of crisis or danger and opportunity. So I know that this is a challenging time for everyone, but don't let the danger take away the opportunity for you. There's a lot of opportunity in what's going on right now, and don't miss the opportunity that is also being presented to you. You might have to look for it really hard, but you might be able to find something in this that you can use to for the benefit of yourself and your family.
Right. Because the thing is, and this is why, what I was thinking about before, that I said that whatever I think about this, or whatever you read, or whatever your friends are talking about, and all the people that are raging on social media, whether, for this, for the lockdown, against the lockdown, shaming people who are out in public, or saying you should go out in public, whoever's doing that, remember, what you think about this, like the big picture, doesn't matter, because like the people in charge have made the decision. So it's up to us to try to make the best of it and to look at the situation from where we are and then say like, okay, this is where we need to chill out, or this is how we can have a positive impact. So if we look at the ways we can make positive impacts in our own homes, in our own families, in our own lives, like if we're worried about the global conspiracy and that Bill Gates is doing this whole thing, don't worry about Bill Gates. Don't worry. Whatever Bill Gates is doing, it doesn't matter to you. Like we have a way that we can take care of the people in our lives. And that seems to be the one thing that we do have control over. Like we'll never have as much control as Bill Gates.
And maybe we don't want it, though. We might not want as much control as Bill Gates.
Right. Of course not. You don't want to be obviously you don't want to be a lizard person. And I'm not saying he's a lizard person, but you guys have used Windows like ME, right? So you know
Nice.
that obviously Bill Gates.
Wait,
Here's
Mike,
a
we're talking
lizard
about-
person for you right here.
we're talking about staying, but let's not focus on Windows ME, because one of the techniques for meditation is to focus on the present moment,
There
not the
you go.
past.
Yes, there
Don't
you go.
worry about the future,
Reroute us.
just this very moment.
the now. and that's exactly right, because let's start. So I know, okay, we had to kind of talk about the whole thing in order to get to get beyond the weird stuff. Like everything has to be said before we can start talking about ways that we can use spiritually, paranormally, whatever you want to think of it. Even if you're a chaos magician, you might be like, I don't believe in anything, but I believe in focusing my will. Okay, chaos magician. You can be an atheist and still believe in focusing your will and focusing your mind. And so let's talk about different ways that we can change our present mindset to where when you're watching the news and you're like, oh my God, we're all going to die. How do we change that? And I think the most popular way right now is through meditation. So Wendy, what were you going to say about meditation and kind of ways to take that anxiety and maybe tell your amygdala, there's no lion here?
Well, we've talked about this so many times before, but it's worth bringing up, just the fact that meditation is kind of like a free escape from any situation. And one of the meditation techniques that's very well tried and true is the mindfulness technique where you focus on, you just focus on your breathing, or it could be an activity like, for example, I'm just going to take a sip of coffee. I'm going to focus on the texture and the flavor and the temperature and just only think about that and let everything else, the current stress of the situation, the worries, the concern I have for other people that are dealing with worse situations, just all of that is in an instant poof. And so the mindfulness technique is really useful. And they say to, just don't think about the past, don't think about the future. And it's something that prison inmates often, it's a technique for coping for people who have long sentences that, they don't want them to sit and dwell on their regrets and how they got there and all that.
Right. What do you do if you kill? Like, what do you do if you're in prison? I haven't even thought about that.
Well, I was looking to try to find stories from people who have dealt with like tragic situations or things that, and I just to preface this, no, this situation we're in is not, you can't compare these things. You can't compare it, but you can look at what ways that.
Wendy, I'm sorry, you're not living with a 3-year-old, so I will compare this to prison.
I think that it's worth looking at ways that humans in the past have dealt with situations that were difficult, that were, where everyone's kind of, or a large group of people are going through a similar kind of thing. So I was looking for stories like how people survived the Great Depression, techniques that they used, people like even as extreme as concentration camps. Like imagine what those people had to do. And I'm not likening these situations by any means, but it's still interesting to see how humans have dealt with things. So one of the articles that I found was a story from a man who spent 27 years in solitary confinement. And he was providing some tips on making the best use of the time alone. And I have to say that this article, he's very, very, the optimism and the positivity was kind of the key here. But one of the things that he said...
How long did he spend in solitary confinement?
Well, it's 27 years, but it wasn't...
Was this Nelson Mandela?
No. It was just he was accused of murder, and then while he was in prison, there was a prison riot where he was accused of 5 people being murdered in the riot. So it extended his situation. And of course, there's all kinds of controversy around whether he actually did that or not. So, but to the point of just wanted to read one of the things that he said. And he said, I've watched quite a few people fall apart, lose their minds, but I went in another direction. So 27 years later, I'm still sound in mind and body and spirit. I attribute that to just reading and cultivating myself. That's the thing. When you're thrown upon yourself, you realize you are more equipped than you realize. A lot of the system keeps us from realizing our own power, and it's a good opportunity for people to tap into that. So he was kind of looking at everything from the perspective of his own inner ability to improve and to use that time to cultivate his own self.
And I love that you included that, Wendy, because I just want to add that, there have been people who experienced concentration camps, like Viktor Frankl, for example, wrote a great book that people might want to check out right now called Man's Search for Meaning. So
it's not a beach read. Like I've read.
No,
it's an awesome. It's a life-changing book. But don't be like, you know what? I'm gonna take this to the beach. No, take the Da Vinci Code to the beach and save this one for like reading a chapter a night for a while and then meditate on it.
Yes. So, I mean, there have been people in terrible situations that have overcome those situations. You mentioned Nelson Mandela. We have Viktor Frankl. We have Thich Nhat Hanh, for example, who he's a Buddhist, and he is a great person to look into many of his books. He lived through the Vietnam War and a lot of different traumas that went on with the people there. And so he's a Buddhist monk, and he his methods are very accessible. And I would really recommend some of his techniques. Like you were mentioning, Wendy, the technique of, as you're doing something, really be in the moment. Scott and I call it eating the orange, from reading something from a Thich Nhat Hanh book about like how he was eating an orange and having this incredible like spiritual experience. I mean, something that we take for granted every day, but just, wondering about existence, about how he got here and how the orange got here, and, how, the fact that the orange is so nourishing and so beautiful and just so refreshing, and, how it's a miracle that all these things have come together in the form that they currently are. So you can live your life in a moment. And you can also use those breathing techniques. And I have some more to talk about as well, Mike, whenever you think it's the appropriate time. I've been doing some Vim Hof breathing techniques, and he has some interesting advice for this time as well.
Well, I think we should talk a little bit. We're going to get to Vim Hof. Definitely, because he's the balls, obviously.
He's a popular fella right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And for good reason. For well-researched reasons.
The University of Wisconsin has the Center for like consciousness studies, and
right.
We have a whole thing like the University of Wisconsin in Madison here, where Wendy and I are, has a center specifically based on meditation. Who was started by Richie Davidson, who actually worked with Stanley Krippner back in the 1970s at the Maimonides Institute in New York. For sleep research.
Wow, I did not know he worked at Maimonides. Oh, they did a lot of cool, very paranormal work.
So Richie
Maimonides.
Davidson was like Stanley Krippner's assistant on a bunch of stuff. And so
I did not know
and he's
that.
like buddies with the Dalai Lama or whatever. Like they might be lizard people, but they're cool. And
he just wrote a great book recently too. I forget the name of it, but
the thing is,
I would recommend that book as well.
And so like somebody who's working on the staff, Dr. Charles Raisin, how does meditation help during extreme situations? When it works, it calms the body and mind, even in beginners. Although it's important to emphasize that not everybody benefits from meditation, like our mother, Allison. She went through a family tragedy, and she tried transcendental meditation in the 70s, and she says that she just couldn't do it.
Aww.
And like everything in life, it's not necessarily for everyone. For people who have actually learned to meditate previously and have an active practice, mindfulness can help put things in perspective. This can also be hugely helpful in extreme situations and can help people think more clearly. And people think that, asking about misconceptions about meditation is like, some people think that meditation is really difficult to start.
True.
In fact, it's easy, right? It does seem like, you think like, oh my God, it's gonna be hard. But if you just, if you try for a minute, 2 minutes, when they're talking to him, they were discussing the, remember when all those kids were trapped in a cave?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Remember when all those kids were trapped in a cave a few years ago? They were talking to him about, because it was in Thailand, and so.
Oh yeah, I do remember now.
Their soccer coach was a Buddhist monk, and he was using meditation to calm their minds.
That's lucky.
While they were stuck in the cave, right.
Yeah.
It's lucky they had a Buddhist monk, because if they would have had me, I'd have been like, "We all gonna die. We gotta get out of here. We're gonna die."
Right, and so. Panic can actually exacerbate the situation, especially in a cave. If you have limited oxygen,
oh my gosh,
you want to make sure that you're calming yourself so that you're using less oxygen at that point.
Right. So the thing is, meditation, obviously, there's a physical aspect to it, and getting there, and in extreme situations, the first thing, focusing on your breathing, and also imagining see if you can feel all of your different parts, like your extremities.
Whoa.
Like think about.
Right.
Yeah. But no, what I mean is, so when you think about meditation, you're thinking about hey, I'm feeling my fingertips, and you're like, okay, my fingertips aren't touching anything, but they can feel something. And then, but as you imagine energy going through your body, you can feel that different part, even though nothing's happening there. And so there is a physical aspect to meditation that can take you out of the moment and into yourself, which is where you might need to go in moments of extreme anxiety. And that's what Vim Hof, the Iceman, that's what he specializes in, is that kind of body control. So, Allison, what does Vim have to teach us at a time?
And what are your experiences?
Okay.
I'm curious to hear about this.
Okay, so I'm just at the very beginning of this and, still trying to wrap my head around it. So I do have obsessive compulsive disorder. So I just want to share with people that sometimes, you might be listening right now, and if you're in the same boat that I have been in, you might be thinking, focus on my breath. That's the last thing I want to do. That gives me extra anxiety. And I used to experience that as well, because even in yogic traditions, Buddhism, you name it, if you're doing some kind of meditation, there are lots of different varieties. So transcendental is different than mindfulness, for example. There's chakra meditations. There's many different kinds of meditation. So if mindfulness doesn't work for you, don't stop there. I got to say that. But also, if you're feeling anxiety about the meditation itself, just know that is not unusual either. I felt that myself, like sometimes when I'm breathing, I feel like I'm not doing it right, or I can get myself so worked up that I feel like I can't breathe, or I can't get enough oxygen. When I focus too much on something in the unhealthy kind of OCD way, which I've dealt with all my life. But the thing about Vim Hof is he has particular types of techniques, and I have been enjoying them because I haven't fallen into that same trap. Because you're hyperventilating when you're doing Vim Hof's method, so you're getting an extraordinary amount of oxygen into your system.
Isn't that bad? Do you need the paper bag?
No.
Is that like hot yoga? The whole hot yoga is the...
No, those are different.
You know what I'm talking about?
Techniques.
Hot yoga?
It heats your breath.
Yeah. There's so much breath work you could do, and actually, there's another book to the side here, which I'll have to grab in a moment. It's called Get High Now. It's about if you want to change your mental state. But
Mike does.
There's a little postscript. It's called Get High Now, so people would buy the book, but then in tiny little letters, it says without drugs.
Clever.
So. Yes. Boring. So there are just no, but not. It's not boring. That's the thing. There's a ton of techniques in there that can change your state of mind right now. So if one doesn't work, you can try another. It's just a book full of incredible methods. So if one doesn't work, don't give up. Just look at it like play. Like, I'm going to try this and see what weird thing it does to me.
And have you had success with any of these, Allison? Like, is there any special one that you found that worked really well?
Well, like I said, a lot of the breath techniques really kind of stressed me out because of that just hyper focus on the breathing. But with the Vim Hof method, you're getting a lot of oxygen. So I didn't have that fear that, I'm not getting enough oxygen. And it's a little bit simpler than some of the techniques in the Get High Now book, which are just, they're very ordered. Like in the past, I've made like recordings of what I'm supposed to do, and then listen to the recording of myself so that I could make sure I was doing it right. Mm-hmm. So, one of my OCD things is not feeling like you're not doing something right. But
it's because you're not.
Vim Hof, although, you can go or you have been able to in the past, go study with him personally. Beyond that,
I want you to study with me.
He makes so many things free on YouTube. Like, there are so many techniques that he gives you everything right there, and he does it for free because he's not, he has become an international superstar, but really what he wants to do is he wants to usher in this new wave of evolution where people take control of their minds and bodies.
All I can think of when you said an international superstar, though, was that line from Rock Me Amadeus when Falco is like, I am a superstar, so popular. And that's all I can think of. Yes. Vim Hof also singing along the Rock Me Amadeus. He's sitting in ice and melting the ice.
Totally a goof.
And I was thinking, Vim Hof, superstar.
That's a good one for Easter, Wendy.
Absolutely. So his methods are very simple. He usually does a cycle of 30 breaths, and where you take it all in, but you don't let it all out. And he does have many videos and just a audio file too on YouTube, which leads you through it, the 30 breaths. And then there's a hold at the end for like 75 seconds. And where you're not breathing.
That's where you pass out.
No, then you suck it in again. And you feel incredible at that point after the cycles. So I would really suggest going on YouTube. And he did an interview, which they have a really good snippet with Russell Brand on his podcast Under the Skin recently. And it was all about the coronavirus. The reason why he thinks his method could be effective against bacteria and viruses is because not only has it allowed his method to accomplish extreme feats, like, all right, so he and his students have climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I think a couple of times now. They're going to try to do it again in September if all these restrictions are lifted. But they wear boots, and shorts, and then that's it. They climb Mount Kilimanjaro, essentially in their underwear, and they don't do any acclimatization whatsoever. And then one of the times they did
I'm in my
they were
underwear
able to
right
do it
now underneath this entire thing.
Of course. Well, none of us need to be wearing pants. Another benefit of the situation.
What are pants?
So, I hate
Pants are pants.
Anyway, I know. But he was able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in his underwear with 30 of his students in 28 hours. He went to the top and got all the way to the bottom in 28 hours. It usually takes regular climbers 5 days. So, and people, there were mountaineering societies that were like, you are going to die.
Yeah, that seems dangerous.
Especially,
yes.
Like, what's going to happen to your willy?
And you have to acclimate to the different altitudes, right?
Yes. So there are actually two books. One book that was written by Scott Carney, which
Called
is about
Frozen Willies.
No, yes. So search Frozen Willies on Amazon, and it'll just be fun to see what you get. But anyway, just search the author's name, Scott Carney. I'm listening to the book right now, and do I have it here? Oh yes, it's called What Doesn't Kill Us. So it's
just freezes
detail. Yeah, if you want detail about this method, check out What Doesn't Kill Us. But the new book by Scott Carney, which elaborates on not just Vim Hof, but other methods as well, is coming out on Monday, actually. And we're recording this on Sunday, the 12th. So it's coming out on Monday. It is called The Wedge. So it talks about how you can actually modulate responses that have been thought to be involuntary up until this point, up until Vim Hof, at least. They have been thought to be completely involuntary. Now, let's get back to why does Vim Hof think that he can activate his immune system? Well, he has shown in tests with scientists, in studies under controlled conditions, that he could be injected by something called endotoxin. And it is something produced by bacteria, but before they inject it into you, they make sure that it can't cause you any real harm, but it tricks your body into thinking it can. So when you get injected with endotoxin, you immediately get very severe symptoms, flu symptoms. And what they were amazed about is they injected Vim Hof and it had no effect on him. He was able to do his breath technique and turn on his immune system to completely stop responding in the way that you would typically respond to this injection. So
Vim Hof should be at the front line of the coronavirus.
Yeah, so he did that in, I believe it was
Forget
2011.
respirators.
Seriously.
Vim Hof.
Okay.
He's Superman.
So he did that in 2011. And then just in, I believe this is 2014, they repeated the study with his students because they had initially thought, well, everybody's physiology is a little bit different. Perhaps he's just some kind of weird anomaly, and it has nothing to do with the technique
He's
itself.
obviously a weird anomaly.
Yes, but no, he isn't, because he's been able to teach these things to his students. So they did this other study,
Boom.
and you can find it online through NIH. And it's voluntary activation of the sympathetic nervous system and attenuation of the innate immune response in humans. And this is where they studied several of his students. These subjects had been, they weren't his students. I shouldn't say that. They weren't his students originally. They were just volunteers that had just been carefully selected by the researchers, so as not to be, just to be more of a random sample. So they selected, a bunch of people, and then they had some of them get Wim Hof's method, and some of them didn't. And then so they were able to see that Wim Hof's method really works to activating the immune system, which, we didn't think that we had conscious control over. But he's showing that we actually have many ways we can, or many things we can control that we thought were completely involuntary. He's been showing that his method, is busting these myths and, rewriting a new chapter. So I'm very excited to get the new book by Skye Carney and to continue working on this. I'm not so excited about cold showers. That's part of the method too. But hey, we live in Wisconsin. Let's use the cold.
It's funny, Allison, that
I'm not moving anytime soon.
You focused on a certain kind of method, the Vim Hof method. And what I've been doing to alleviate stress lately is actually a funny thing. Because I was a meditator every day for a long time, and I did my I did the whole deal, and
you were chanting Om.
Yeah, I did the Om chants, the mantras, that kind of thing.
Yes. So it's mantra meditation again, another different form.
And there's a certain Dr. Wayne Dyer meditation that Wendy and I have done. That's like, the thing is, and he chants it in your ears when you listen to it. He's like,
and his breath goes on forever.
Have you done it together?
No, I bought it and then I shared it with him.
But also the problem is that when I try to do the I've got my cat freaks out, and so like he attacks me when I try, and so but I was having trouble quieting my monkey mind.
Yeah.
During meditation, and so I started doing the Rosary because you already know the prayers.
If you already know the prayers.
If you already know the prayers. Alice and I grew up RC, Roman Catholic, and so but it was a way to like do the same kind of thing, but just have it be a little bit easier for me, at least because I was saying the prayers instead of focusing on some kind of mantra or even worrying about trying to manifest something, because I was trying to practice chaos magic for a couple of years.
I did not know this.
Sigils and the whole thing, and like I tried firing sigils in different ways, all these kind of different ways, and it was an interesting thing, but it always felt very silly. And chaos magic can feel silly. This idea that you focus your will on something, and then you fire the sigil off, and then you might be in this mystical state through meditation, or in chaos magic, there's a ton of masturbation stuff.
Yes.
Yes, it's all masturbation in chaos magic.
What?
Yeah, so sex magic
It's
to
basically sex
empower.
magic. Oh yeah, like it's this idea.
Using the orgasmic response to empower your
focus on
sigil,
it.
for example.
But the thing is, chaos magic all felt kind of somewhat, not necessarily selfish, but it just felt like you're trying to recreate your own belief system. And so when I was thinking, I was like, well, there's already a belief system 1 million people are doing. So why don't I just try something, just do the rosary? And I found it extremely calming. It takes about 15 minutes to get through. And the rosary, if for you non-RCs out there.
Yes, please illuminate us.
As our father, as Allison and my father would call the Catholics, he grew up a Christian Scientist. So like he grew up in a cult.
Yep.
And so he would call us, he's like, oh yeah, you're an RC like your mother. So with the rosary, what you do is you have a bunch of beads. It's a prayer psalter is what it's called. It's a grouping of prayers. And so you have a bunch of beads, and then you say a prayer, and then you go to each bead, and each bead is a Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace.
That's nice because it helps you keep track.
Prayer. Right. So you go through the beads, and then you get to the end of the one bead thing called a decade. So you say 10 Hail Marys, and then you say like an extra thing, and then you say an extra thing for like Our Lady of Fatima, who we discussed in the Marian Prophecy episode. And then you go on to the next one, you say in Our Father, and then you go on to the next one and say another one. And so you do this like list of prayers, and it just kind of, it's just a way to like chill out or whatever. And it was invented by the Dominican priests maybe like 800 years ago. But the thing is, a lot of people say that there's been miracles associated with rosary prayers. And
wow.
The most there's been a bunch of miracles associated with them, but I take any miracle before the 20th century with a grain of salt, because in the early days, and we discussed this in our St. Patrick's episode, in the early days, the Catholic Church didn't really try to do much in like researching miracles and making people saints. So people in the early days of the Catholic Church were just made saints by being particularly holy and praying a lot. And it wasn't until like the 20th century where they really went in and they were like, okay, we got to check out these miracles. And in fact, they will send out atheist scientists to investigate the miracles and make sure that each particular miracle couldn't have another explanation before they make a person a saint. And one of these interesting things happened in Hiroshima in August 9th, 1945. We know what happened in Hiroshima. They drop an atomic bomb. Now there's 4 Jesuit priests like really close to where the bomb dropped off. They survived the initial bombing. These Jesuit priests, Hugo LaSalle, Hubert Schiffer, Wilhelm Kleinsgorga, and Hubert Seislich. And they're at the rectory of the Church of Our Lady of Assumption, which is one of the few buildings that survived the bomb blast. He writes in his diary, Father Seislich, that they only got injured a little bit and the windows broke inside the church. But they didn't, get hurt. And they were like less than a mile from the explosion. The doctors who take care of them afterwards come in and say, look, this radiation is going to kill you. You were not very far away from ground zero of where the bomb dropped off. And like, you're going to get radiation sickness. Even if you don't feel it, you're going to get it. Well, they don't die. They don't even get radiation sickness. 1976, 31 years later, Father Schiffer attends the Eucharistic Congress in Philadelphia and tells his story. He confirms everybody's still alive, nobody's sick. They're examined by doctors, he said 200 times over the course of the years, and there was no radiation found in their bodies. And he said, well, what happened was we prayed the rosary every day. And that's amazing. That's what protected us from what happened. And he's like, we were living the message of Fatima, from Our Lady of Fatima and her appearances in the early 20th century. And we prayed the rosary every day. And he said that was the miracle of Hiroshima, that these priests ended up being okay, even surviving a literal nuclear blast. And they attributed it. And what I think is interesting about that is because when you look at miracles of the rosary, there's stuff that happens in the 17th century. There's stuff that happens in the 15th century. All that kind of stuff. You're like, okay, well, back in the day, they saw the Loch Ness Monster every 15 minutes. In Madison, we had in the 19th century newspapers, they saw a lake monster like 25 times in the second half of the 19th century. So how much can we believe their newspapers? But things that happened in the 20th century, in modern medicine, during a time when even our parents were alive, this miracle happened.
Right.
So that's what I think is very interesting.
Very.
Yeah, going back to look at things that have been verified. When you're looking for truth, really take verification seriously.
Right. Okay. Oh, here a little ball busting here. Thank you, Scott. Going back to my chaos magic discussion. So you were doing your regular hobby and calling it magic. Quite the magician over there. Quite the magician over there.
Yes.
Hey, Scott, you were the focus of my sex magic. Did I mention?
Oh, man.
Okay, Mark Johnson. Sounds like you could focus your mind on anything as long as you're focusing and not thinking about stressors. Is that way off base? And you know what? I don't think that's way off base at all. That's the idea, is that it's changing your focus from something negative or something that's causing you anxiety at the moment. And as long as the lion's not eating you, right?
Right.
It's okay to change your focus for a few minutes.
Right. And it's okay to, try to use whatever is happening in a way that's constructive for you. So, we're talking about refocusing, taking control, taking agency, and that's going to look different for everyone.
Yes.
But these are just some examples you can use.
The mantra thing, Mike, if someone isn't in the RC club, you could still use that concept of repeating something that's calming, or you could still use the beads if you wanted to keep track, but it's just the idea of focusing on something that's like a mantra of whatever nature. It doesn't have to necessarily be religious, or it could be whatever your own belief system, something from that.
Sure.
And it could be an affirmation, like who is that guy on Saturday Night Live?
Smalley. Al Franken.
Stuart Smalley.
Al Franken.
So,
Right.
So maybe rewatch those on YouTube. And
or you could use a song lyric or something, anything that you find comforting, that just, I'm good enough. I'm
or
smart
funny.
enough. No, but honestly.
Right. It doesn't have to be deadly serious. It could be funny. It could be playful. And here's that book, everybody.
Oh yeah. No, I have Get High Now. I bought it as the ebook. And so it has games you can play. And then the thing about Get High Now, without drugs, is that
by James Nestor. Check it out.
It finds little ways that your mind, you can trick your own mind and stuff like that, even in a non-chemically altered state, or not like. We talk about chemical alterations, but also remember that meditation can cause the same kind of feelings that psychedelic drugs can. There's a couple more things I kind of wanted to talk about when it came to paranormal ways of dealing with crisis. And one of the most interesting things I found about was the patron saint of stress.
What?
Hey, there's a patron saint of stress? I did not know that.
There's a patron saint of stress and of crisis. There's a couple different ones. And one is named Padre Pio, who is a 20th century saint who was canonized by Pope John Paul II. And his story actually deserves a whole episode because he's a stigmatic, like his story is crazy, and there's Satan and stuff.
He could fly, perhaps, but I know a lot about him.
He could bilocate.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I know a lot about him as well because in Milwaukee on Brady Street, we had a doctor who, practiced there for like 50 years and was, honored by the Medical Association, was a real doctor. But what he would do in his off time is do presentations around the country about Padre Pio. So there are people even today that are devoted to Padre Pio and his miracles. So that's a good internet search right there.
But the first person you pray to in a time of crisis is Saint Dymphna. Or it might be. So Saint Dymphna, she lived supposedly in the 8th century. But her story is first recorded in the 13th century in France. And she was an Irish saint. So sometimes she's called like the Belle of Ireland or whatever. And
Wow.
so let's go back to the 7th century here, and let's talk about Saint Dymphna, because she is one of the first people you pray to when you're in some kind of crisis. And I'll tell you why. Her story is, well, let's just say, like most of the saints, her story has a trigger warning involved. So Dymphna's 14 years old, and her mother's a Christian, but her father's a pagan. And he's a like a lord king. He's got a little fiefdom in Ireland. And the mother's a Christian, probably converted by St. Patrick, a man. And her dad's a pagan. But when she's 14 years old, she says, I'm going to be a servant of the Lord, and takes a vow of chastity. Shortly thereafter, her mom dies. And her father, Damon, loved his wife so deeply, he was just depressed for months. And he starts going crazy after his wife dies. The thing is, this is back in the 7th century or whatever, and they're like, well, you got to get remarried. Maybe you should remarry like a chieftain's daughter or something like that to unify the kind of tribes, or another king, a princess. But he's like, I only will marry someone as beautiful as my dead wife.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
So he's
And
vain.
they can't find, well, yeah, he's vain. But they can't find anybody. And so what he does is he's like, I should probably marry my daughter.
What?
No!
It.
Did I write this story? I said trigger warnings. So
Yeah.
she learns of her father's intentions, and she's like, no way, I'm not getting involved in any of this Greek bullshit. And she flees the country along with her confessor, her priest, and 2 servants and the king's fool. That's the best part. She takes the fool along with her. And they go to Belgium, and they take refuge in the town of Geel. And so once she's in Geel, traditionally it's said that she built a hospital for the poor and sick of the region, and because she had money, because her father was a rich king. And then she, so she's trying to take care of people. She's trying to, be a saint. And her father eventually hears about this, and he sends like men to go after her. And he goes to Geel, Belgium, to find his daughter. And then he kills her priest. And then he says to her, you got to come back to me with Ireland. And she's like, no way am I coming back to Ireland and being my father's wife, because that's weird, Dad. So in their fight, he cuts her head off. At 15 years old, he cuts her head off.
This is.
What
are we talking about here? How is this relaxing?
This is Saint Dymphna.
I feel really relaxed right now, Wendy.
So what happened?
I'm just thinking of the fountain of blood like shooting out of her neck. That just whoa. I can
feel
fall
so
asleep
centered.
right now. Sweet dreams.
Okay. Well, I know, but this is how saints get created, and that's why I'm going into it.
Yes.
So she's beheaded by her father. She's like, both her and her priest are martyred. The residents of the town buried her in a nearby cave. And so some say that her remains are in like a shrine to her in Massillon, Ohio today. But the thing is that the hospital that she built is still there.
Wow.
And so this hospital in Belgium has taken care of, so she is the patron saint of the mentally ill, the nervous, runaways, the emotionally disturbed, and those who suffer neurological disorders. The patron saint of survivors of incest and sexual assault, but also anxiety. So when you feel anxiety, you say a prayer to Saint Dymphna. And the interesting thing is that that hospital's still around. And in fact, they don't call, they call the people who are their patients that they take care of, they don't call them patients or, they call them boarders, and that they're just staying there for a little while. And they give mentally ill people and stuff jobs and stuff like to do in that town. And so this happened in the 7th century, supposedly, but her story is first written in the 13th century. But the thing is, that hospital and that the town of Geel, Belgium, still is a place that's a safe place for people who are mentally ill. And that's why Saint Dymphna is the patron saint of anxiety and the mentally ill. And you pray to her when you feel extraordinarily anxious or, anxiety, and that she will pray to God for you. Because that's the thing about saints. Saints can't do anything because only God has power, at least in the Catholic Church. Saints can't do anything for you, but they can pray for you. So you pray to the saint to pray for you because you think that God likes the saint better than you because it's a saint and you're just a sinner.
That's right. So they intercede for you. So that's what they do.
Right. You pray for intercession on your behalf from that saint. And so that was an interesting thing. I'd never heard of Saint Dymphna before, but her story obviously was very gruesome and gross. But she is...
And stressful, you might say.
I'd say it was stressful. But what happened is that it ended up having something where you have a very modern idea of how we treat mentally ill people, not just sticking them in a Utica crib like they would have done in a 19th century sanitarium, but by giving them jobs and something to do. And this was started in the 13th century. So this idea, it just, I don't know, it's a patron saint story, but also had a kind of nice, obviously not her beheaded is a nice ending, but the ending of what happened in the town is something positive that happened. And Saint Dymphna,
making the world a better place.
Saint Dymphna is a comforting presence for a lot of people who feel anxiety.
And she can be an example of, you can't control everything, but can you make the world better? Can you make your own community better? And that's what she did.
You can't control everything when your dad is a frickin' pervert.
That's right.
Well, what else, you guys? Is there other thing in particular? Is there obviously, mantras might deserve their own episode at one time, because I think that the idea of the mantra, it's not just because I think of a mantra as like, okay, I'm Stuart Smalley. It's a daily affirmation. It's like you go back into yourself and you're like, okay, we're gonna kick some ass. We're gonna do well. We're gonna make sure it's gonna be a great day.
Nice.
You have that kind of thing.
Yes. Well, I found through the years I really like a certain kind of yoga called chakra yoga. So that does incorporate some chanting for the different chakra areas of your body.
So what do you chant?
And I'm not going to do the chant live, but I would just say,
that's prime content.
I would just say, check out chakra. Check out chakra yoga, because again, this is another tool for your toolbox. They might not all work for you. I mean, you got to find the one that works for you.
And if you're a chaos magician, you only need one tool in your toolbox.
Oh, geez.
Yes. Yes, you know which one you've got in your toolbox, Mike. But beyond that, there are a lot of different techniques you can try. Chakra yoga is one of them. I liked some of the different chants because they don't mean any. I mean, they are supposed to activate certain areas of your body, but unlike transcendental meditation, which is it's tied in with venerating a guru, which I don't go in for. Chakra yoga is, more about, reconnecting with your own energy and your own power. And, some of the yoga poses like the camel pose, oh man, I have such trippy experiences with that one.
Wait, hold on, Allison. You're on video. Let's see the camel pose.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
That's for the Patreon only.
I can possibly do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Patreons get to see Allison trot the camel pose.
Yeah, you're bending all the way back. So there's no way that you can possibly do it.
But is it a dromedary camel? I don't know. I'm just making a joke about you.
So anyway, camel pose does really funky things. I mean, I nearly I see colors. All the chatter in my mind stops involuntarily. It's not like I can keep anything in my head. So it's kind of an interesting switch for me to do the camel pose and then to have, see the colors and this rush of energy and, like almost a humming in your ears sometimes.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
I feel, something.
I'm gonna do the count
something
pose right
trippy
now.
happens. So you might want to just try some different things and see what does it for you. But there's a lot of fun exploration to be done.
I'm gonna do the camel pose, say a bunch of Hail Marys, and see if I can fly like Padre Pio.
There you go. You got it. That's your own program.
Now, so Wendy, what have you been doing? Like, what's?
Oh, man. Okay.
Have you been meditating? Have you been what? How have you been keeping cool when everybody tells you you're gonna die?
Well, I'm a regular meditator, although my practice does lapse because I'm human. And so I've been making a conscious effort to reinstate my practice and keep it regular.
Okay.
So, and people who know me really well know that I'm also kind of obsessive about like setting goals and keeping the don't break the chain technique where you try to, do something every single day. And they're typically small things. So what I recommend...
The Jerry Seinfeld, don't break the chain, right?
Yeah. But I think even if you just set a little goal for yourself. So if you say like, for 3 days, I'm going to try to do these things. I'm going to try to meditate for, you can set it something very reasonable, even as just 5 minutes. And nobody can say they can't find 5 minutes, But
Right.
5 minutes of meditation. Do a couple push-ups, eat something, a piece of fruit, whatever. So like right now I'm on day 7 of a 10-day challenge, which 10 days is kind of a long stretch. So I recommend starting it off with something maybe shorter and then and you give yourself a little reward. So after you make the 10 days, then you get to splurge or do something really fun that you have been holding off on. So my, this is a week into my 10-day challenge, and I feel like I was just noticing yesterday how much better I feel, because I've been like having a smoothie every morning, getting a little exercise and fresh air each day. I've got my like push-up, sit-up regime, but that's, it's not necessary. But the meditation is key. And just having that little tiny break in the day where it to me, it's just like a mini vacation. You're allowed to just forget about everything. Like, it's okay. Whatever's happening in this world is just, it doesn't need to be in this world right now. So I give myself that 10 minutes or whatever. But feeling the success of being able to check off for this many days in a row, I've done something, little healthy things for myself. So I'm finding that to be very effective myself. It's not really paranormal, but then, and really quick, I don't want to monopolize the conversation here, but I did want to say that something that I want to try to do, that I have it on my list of things I haven't yet fully, made an effort for, but the gratitude practice is something that a lot of people recommend. And that's just, where you consciously take time to appreciate the things that you do have. And there's actually neuroscience behind it that, and I'm quoting this from an article from positivepsychology.com, that by consciously practicing gratitude every day, we can help neural pathways to strengthen themselves and ultimately create a permanent grateful and positive nature within ourselves. And that's just, by doing it daily, you kind of train yourself to have that innate appreciation of the good, which just affects every aspect of your daily life. So I think it's worthwhile to give that one a try, and hopefully I can try it and report back on my results.
Sure. Well, I got to say that the gratitude, I mean, I did the 5-minute journal. I still do it actually fairly frequently.
Yeah.
I did the 5-minute journal as a habit for at least a year. And I both you guys, I have been grateful for on many occasions in the 5
Oh gosh. Thanks, Mike.
so
I'm grateful for that.
Sure. Well, no,
I'm
but
grateful for your
is.
gratitude.
You think about the people that make your life easier or fun, and then you think about that, and you realize that it's easy to think about the people you want to fucking strangle.
But why? Does that make you feel good?
Right. It does not make you feel good, but it's easy to think about it. It's easy to get lost in righteous anger and be like, oh my God,
yeah,
I'm so mad at that person, and I want to stab them. But when you think about the people who make your life great, that leads the rest of your day to be much better.
And chemically, when we express gratitude and receive the same, our brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the two crucial neurotransmitters responsible for our emotions, and they make us feel good. So there is even if you're just like, I don't like this, it's something I'm not enjoying, this thought process, those chemicals are going to be starting to generate. So you're doing yourself like an actual science, something good.
You're doing yourself a chemical
a favorite.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing yourself a favor that is scientifically proven. And I just want to say, one last thing here, just following on with what you're saying, Wendy, about meditation. It doesn't have to be for a long time each day. In fact, Dr. Richard Davidson at UW-Madison, who we previously mentioned, he and his colleagues have found in, laboratory studies under controlled conditions that they can actually change someone's brain, and they've verified this through PET scans, with as short as 2 months of meditation that is just for 20 minutes a day. So it's the simplest form of mindfulness meditation. They've found in PET scans that it has actually changed the brain to be more like the brains of advanced Tibetan monks, meditators who have done this for years, whose brains they've also studied. So they've compared study participants' brains to these Tibetan monks and found that you can have positive changes in your own brain that are, verifiable by PET scan in as little as 2 months. And that's from just 20 minutes a day.
And then eventually we can all become meditators like Alexander David Neal and create a tulpa that kills our enemies.
Oh.
See, there you go.
You want to talk about the fastest way to alleviate stress? It is to, I can't think of it, to crush your enemies, have them bow before you and hear the lamentations and cries of their children.
And you can do that. You can do that. So just postpone that righteous anger for a little bit, and so you get to the point where you can create that tulpa to kill everyone.
The murderous tulpa. But the thing is, it is important to stay positive in this time. And I'm not just saying that I'm not just saying this as like a character from the movie Trolls, who just says like positivity, yay! The thing is, the best way we can conquer these kind of things is to focus on what we can do for ourselves and our family and all these kind of things. Number one. And I think that we've covered a lot of those ways today. If it's from meditation to like looking at biofeedback, like I think about my watch tells me what my heart rate is. And if I see that my heart rate, if I read an article on Reddit, my heart rate increases, I should probably stop reading that article. If I see somebody online that I hate, I should probably just you know what? That's not going to make things better. Just block them. Get it out of your life. Just finish it up.
And remember that the things that sometimes feel like they're difficult to do, you have some resistance to, because I know I've been reading lots of people saying you know what? I don't want to set a goal to be healthy. I just want to sit here and eat and drink. But it might not be easy, but it's just a tiny little thing. And it's kind of like taking your medicine, Once it actually starts working and you start noticing, feeling better, then it gets easier. So it might be a little, and it's okay. It's okay to feel bad, and it's totally fine to binge. Oh my gosh, Oreo, caramel, coconut cookies. Hello. That is my quarantine splurge binge food of choice. But anyway.
Yes, my quarantine binge has been potatoes. I'm like, that's it. Pandemic's on.
What is it? Boil them, stew them, put them in a pot.
Potatoes again.
Potatoes.
Right.
Yes.
First of all, I wanted to say thank you, John, for getting the quote right when I couldn't. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the women. Which is from Conan the Barbarian, which Oliver Stone wrote.
Goodness.
And that quote is based on something from either Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun. But the thing is, they said something of what is best in life? And that's what he says in that particular film. And Oliver Stone is no slouch, obviously. But that's the thing. It's okay to binge sometimes too, right? Sometimes you're going to do stupid stuff. You're going to be like, hey, I'm going to eat that entire bag of Oreos, or I'm going to eat that, and that's going to happen. So don't feel guilty about living your life.
And don't be hard on yourself. It's okay.
Right. Well, that's the important thing. I always think, I've talked about this in a podcast before, and in the movie Mumford, which is a Lawrence Kasdan film from, 20 years ago now. And there's a psychologist in that movie, and the psychologist is talking to a nebbishy kind of character. And the guy talks about his dreams, or actually sexual fantasies. And in his he's even turned down in his sexual fantasies. And he's like, oh my God, this guy can't even get laid in his own fantasies. And so even in his own head, he's punishing himself. For what? And the idea is like, there's plenty of time to feel bad about all of this or whatever. But you don't need to punish yourself for what's happening in the world. Just do your best.
And it's not helping anyone to feel bad. So why not feel good?
It is not. So, I mean, I think that's a good way to close out this particular episode, that everybody out there, life is hard. Do your best. Don't punish yourself.
And keep your community around you, Don't be afraid to reach out to people like us.
Exactly. Right. We're here. And we're especially here for our Patreon community. And you can find the Patreon at patreon.com/sunspotmusic is where you can find, and that helps keep the podcast and the songs and the videos and everything like that coming. That pays for our hosting fees. It pays for our email list server and little things like that. Patreon.com/sunspotmusic. If you're interested in becoming one of the coolest people we know, please check that out.
Like Christine, who just signed up last week. Thank you so much.
Christine signed up last week. On this particular episode, we were talking to John Dryzga. He is a Patreon since 2016. Cheers to you, John. Mark Johnson, Patreon not too long after John, actually, probably end of 2016, and has been a Patreon since then. Everybody out there, actually, brand new Patreon, Iris.
Yes, so excited to have her in the community. Love Iris.
Yes, thank you for
talented woman
joining this morning, making our Easter Sunday special. We want all of you guys to remember that no matter what, it's going to be okay, and you're breathing and you're eating and you're living and you're doing fine. So it's hard and it's weird, and like it's just none of us have lived through a time like this. And I know to the people, like I was just talking about a guy that survived the nuclear blast in Hiroshima.
Right.
Or you think about the people that lived through the Ukrainian famine. Or you think about the people that lived through the Great Depression.
Gosh, yeah.
And we're like, hey, we have Tiger King.
We're like, my internet went out.
I know. Oh, God. And those people are like, I ate shoe leather.
Right.
Or, we have an upcoming episode about the Wendigo and the kind of things that people had to eat. Spoiler alert, their friends. When food ran out in the First Nations in the 1500s, 1600s. The thing is, life is hard, and we get that, and it's okay to feel that way. But you know what? We're going to make it through, and it's going to be all right. Just meditate, pray the Rosary, do some chaos magic by yourself in the room, whatever you got to do.
Gosh.
To make it through.
Find the positive in it. Find, as you were saying, Mike, we're in a situation of both danger and opportunity. Find the opportunity and focus on that. Pursue that.
We are living in the interesting times that the Chinese didn't actually tell us about. So either way, you guys are awesome. Thank you, everybody who joined us on YouTube. And anyone in the future, please leave comments. Visit us at our website, othersidepodcast.com, where you can find hundreds of episodes of paranormal stuff and interesting interviews with musicians and actors and paranormal authors.
Researchers.
Very intelligent researchers, and also people who star in paranormal TV shows. And we're sorry about that.
We got a little of everything.
But either way, we'll see you guys on the other side.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
This week's song is a meditation track meant to relax you in just 5 minutes. It's got a beat programmed to slow down your heart rate. It's in G major, which is known as the most relaxing key. It's got a Tibetan singing bowl for meditative properties, and there's even some sounds of rain so that you can experience a touch of nature. Hopefully, this will give you 5 minutes of peace.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
You know, Wendy, this lockdown isn't all bad.
You don't think so, huh?
No, you know why I don't think so? It's because we've had a chance to spend more time with our Patreon community than we have ever before. By the extra live streams and more activity in the See You on the Other Side and Sunspot private Facebook group. It's just we've been able to spend more time with the people who support the things we do. And that, to me, has been one of the most positive things to come out of all this whole safer at home experiment.
Yes, your glass is more than half full, Mike. And I like that. And I agree with you. It has been great. Yeah, it seems like everybody's getting better at hanging out online, you know, as an alternative. So it's really nice to get to see people.
You know, and 3 cheers to our newest Patreon member. That's Anna H. Anna, thank you so much.
Welcome, Anna. Thank you.
And we'll see you inside to see you on the other side. How many times can I say see you inside in a sentence? That's a tongue twister. But we will see you inside the private Facebook group where we talk about the latest, coolest paranormal stories that we see, fun videos, and just have a discussion about the things that we talk about on the See You on the Other Side podcast. And a special shout out to Dr. Ned.
Dr. Ned.
He's on the Patreon level where he gets a shout out in every single episode. So Dr. Ned, thank you for your patronage and your support. We absolutely appreciate it. And we appreciate all of our Patreon members, all the new people we've met in the last month, all the old people who've been stuck by us for years. We appreciate every one of you, and we look forward to the next See You on the Other Side Patreon Hangout, which we're going to schedule for the end of May, and we will see what date works the best for everybody, but we can't wait to see your beautiful, smiling faces online again.
Yes, thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a fabulous week.
I'm going to do the camel pose, say a bunch of Hail Marys, and see if I can fly like Padre Pio.